you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Bud Light. And finally, there's an article where an executive admits, yes, well, I destroyed Bud Light because I was excited to plant seeds of inclusion in the Bud Light brand. And on top of that, they were not happy with how Anheuser-Busch responded when they were getting destroyed by the marketplace. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. So there's this enormous piece in The Guardian. The Guardian is a lefty publication, but in this case, a lot of lefties must have gotten together and complained to The Guardian and put together a piece explaining their side of why it was so necessary and so important to destroy the Bud Light brand to try to push their woke social agenda on people who never asked for it. Coming from The Guardian, panic and rash decision-making ex-Bud Light staff on one of the biggest boycotts in U.S. history. A partnership with the influencer Dylan Mulvaney prompted a backlash that tanked sales. Insiders condemned the company's response. A lot of these insiders are people that got fired. Who got fired? Anheuser-Busch went and fired around 2% of their employees of 19,000 employees. But all of these employees were marketing and administrative people that seemed to be like extra people they didn't really need anyway, at least according to them. They haven't laid off yet, but of course they're going to have to. The people who actually make the beer, even though they've lost at least 30% of their national volume for the beer, meaning you just don't need nearly as many people if you don't have nearly as many customers as you used to have. That's still coming, and we'll probably hear about it any day now. Massive layoffs. In this section of the article, they talk about incompetence on a national level. The idea for Mulvaney's March Madness post came from a Bud Light team member who, quote, wanted to push and make change, says a former Anheuser-Busch employee. The team member was excited to, quote, slowly but surely plant the seeds of inclusion. A multi-billion-dollar brand in business since 1982, #1 beer in the industry, some marketing group member said, hey, you know what? We need to, quote, plant seeds of inclusion, like this is some kind of a psychological operation, abuse the power that they have, leverage the cultural relevance of a brand that's been around for decades to push their social agenda and their politics on customers who only wanted to get reasonable value for money when they were out to get drunk. That's all people were looking to do. But no, you have to be in their cult, or you have to be covertly recruited into their cult, or you can't even enjoy drinking a beer. After they decided to do this ridiculous promotion, the brand then went to Captivate, a top California-based influencer marketing agency. Quote, Bud Light was trying to advertise to the LGBT community, says a former employee of Captivate. Captivate also had layoffs after this. They obviously wanted to pick an influencer who was part of that community. The actor and singer Renee Rapp was also considered, they recall, though it's unclear if those conversations ever got off the ground. I was surprised at the LGBT focus, given the Bud Light name, but I was interested to see where it would go from here. These people had no consideration for the fact that, look, Anheuser-Busch is really tied up in producing this brand. The brand was worth billions upon billions of dollars. The distributors out there also were counting on the brand to do the marketing and the advertising. And this is what they choose to do. Mulvaney was contacted for the sponsor post and received an estimated 4 or 5 figure fee, the former employee says. The Bud Light brand team assigned Draftline, Anheuser-Busch's in-house creative agency, to design Mulvaney's customized Tallboy can. No one there batted an eye. So now we know finally where this can came from. The can came from inside Anheuser-Busch. It didn't have to. You can go and make a custom can that looks exactly like this without any involvement from the Bud Light people at all. Just grab the logos online and get a custom can printed one at a time. Cost you about 25 to 50 bucks at most. But now we know, yes, they were aware and they were responsible for producing the can at Anheuser-Busch. Quote, we do cans for everything, says the ex-Anheuser-Busch employee. Well, I guess in their case, they did cans for everything. They no longer get to work there. Quote, for athletes or for other brands, we did a can for Ruffles. It's really just a gimmick in a social media post. After Mulvaney filmed the video, it was sent to Captivate and Bud Light for sign-off, and it was greenlit shortly after. So after Mulvaney made that promotional video that got this company in all that trouble, Before it was released, it went to Captivate, the promotional agency, as well as Anheuser-Busch, and both of them signed off on it and approved it. In a statement to The Guardian, Captivate says, "In every influencer partnership, both the brand and the collaborating media agencies define the creative strategy, approach, and talent. However, the final decisions regarding the content and talent selections rest with the brand," which is very sensible, and that's the way you would expect it would work. But it's good to see it all finally admitted now, so you kind of know who to blame. Later, as the controversy raged, Bud Light went silent on social media, turned off comments, and ordered its publicity department to stop communicating while everyone regrouped. As a second former Anheuser-Busch employee put it, "From then on, my job was not normal. It was completely different and very strange." Quote, "There was a lot of panic and a lot of rash decision-making," said a third former employee. "We didn't hear anything from leadership for over a month. And then after a few weeks, someone high up at Anheuser-Busch released a statement that pretty much said nothing." That would have been the CEO, Brendan Whitworth. That statement, 2 weeks after Mulvaney's post, said, quote, "We never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. We are in the business of bringing people together over a beer." Meanwhile, conservative commentators unleashed Alyssa Heinerscheid's podcast comments, which were right up on YouTube for anyone to just take her name and put it into a search box, and it came up immediately. And Heinerscheid was targeted with criticism that reportedly included death threats. Within weeks of the post, Anheuser-Busch announced that Heinerscheid had decided to take a leave of absence along with Daniel Blake, vice president of mainstream brands. We still really haven't heard the details on Heinerscheid and Blake. It's possible that they went on leave to be able to protect their positions, which actually would lock in their salaries for something like 6 months. It depends on their relationship with the company. Eventually, we'll probably hear that they've left the company permanently, but who knows? They may never say anything. Quote, "I felt real sympathy for the marketing directors who were scapegoated," says Isla Byrne, a beverage brand consultant and co-founder of Parch, a non-alcoholic spirits brand. "I really believe that some of those people were just trying to do the right thing and do more progressive marketing to engage the new consumer." Quote, "Alyssa Heinerscheid was blamed for all of this when she had nothing to do with it," said the first former Anheuser-Busch employee. "She just came into this role, and all of this strategy was previously established by men that were previously working in those positions." They say Heinerscheid advocated for employee mental health and encouraged employees to set personal boundaries to avoid burnout. She was like a mother at the company. Yeah, well, this mother actually was responsible for the promotions that were going out the door. Heinerscheid was also responsible to respond when it was obvious immediately that people were very upset and, more importantly, confused by the promotion. Because when they pushed out the Dylan Mulvaney promotion, they had Dylan Mulvaney's face on a can that made it appear that they were changing all the cans to the new Dylan Mulvaney can. No one would know what their plans were for the future if that's what they really were going to do, but them being quiet about it told the marketplace nothing. No one knew what was going on. That is the fault of management, and she was in charge of the brand. This was her fault, even if it wasn't her who dreamed up this absolutely stupid and ridiculous idea. And she also should have been a lot more aware that, you know something, you've got to be really careful when you're changing the visual representation of the brand and you're associating it with something that's obviously very controversial, such as Dylan Mulvaney announcing 365 days of girlhood. That is not something that the public accepts. It's certainly not something that all of the public accepts, and it's certainly not something that their customers accepted. And their customers are the people that drink the beer. Those are really the consumers. Their customers are the distributors between the consumers and the manufacturer. Those 500 independent distributors have suffered a lot of trouble and a lot of lost business because of decisions that were made at the company, decisions that Alyssa Heinerscheid, even if it wasn't her idea, it happened under her watch. And the response that we saw, where there was no response, was completely her fault. There's no excuse. This is her disaster. The same employee describes an incompetence in the leadership on a national level at Anheuser-Busch and characterizes Benoit Garbe, the company's chief marketing officer, as someone who, quote, "doesn't really understand a lot about the political battles in the U.S. The employee also claims that Garbe nixed a proposed campaign to market the Mexican beer Estrella Jalisco to Latino drinkers in the U.S., fearing backlash from the conservative wholesalers in certain states. Garbe also has been chief marketing officer since September 2021. Well, maybe it's just a coincidence, added the third former employee, but being put in that position coincided with the negative downturn that I experienced. On the diversity, equity, and inclusion section of its website, Anheuser-Busch says it, quote, aims to make our company as diverse as the communities we serve. And the company holds monthly inclusion modules. But a glance at the company's website shows that 16 of 18 people in leadership are male employees, say that executives lack the nuance to smartly market to racially diverse or young drinkers. That the company is apparently now trying to sweep the whole saga under the rug feels characteristic. Quote, Anheuser-Busch was operating always from a position of fear, says the third former employee, adding that the company vetted all marketing initiatives to make sure they were safe. They're supposed to check the marketing initiatives to make sure that they are safe. The brand does not belong to the marketing team that's working on promoting the brand. The brand belongs to the company, which belongs to the investors. That's how this thing works. These are obviously people that are like just out of college, woke, inexperienced individuals. And it's Alyssa Heinersheet's fault, who did have some business and marketing experience. She knew better than to let these people run wild and then not deal with the problem once it was obvious the problem was getting out of control. Representation in the C-suite, meaning the corporate level suite, CEO, CFO, doesn't solve everything, and Anheuser-Busch is far from the only company without it, but former employees say that a more diverse boardroom might have led to a more empathic handling of the controversy. Alyssa Heinersheet was the first female executive in charge of the Bud Light brand. She wasn't even there for a year, and look what happened. So it doesn't have anything to do with hiring someone who looks a certain way or has a certain gender or changes their gender in a certain way on a certain day. It has to do with people who are competent. This is why we keep talking about merit being so important. Any vice president of marketing that was hired for their meritorious ability and wasn't trying to reinvent marketing to twist it around a social agenda would have stopped this promotion, or when it became obvious that it was a huge mistake, would have dealt with it immediately. We all do that when we see a problem. We don't sit in our house when the thing is on fire. We get out of the fire, and then we figure out what to do about the house being on fire. She didn't address any of this. This spring, Anheuser-Busch stayed quiet while videos circulated online of its beers untouched in grocery stores. Some self-described anti-woke voices seem to take the boycott's success as tacit permission to air prejudice. Quote, the beer has become a manifestation of people's uncomfortableness with trans people, says Springer. And so not buying Bud Light is sort of a socially acceptable way to say, I don't like trans people, or I'm not comfortable with trans people in the world. As someone who's been somewhat involved in this controversy, having made over 100 videos on the subject, and also being very personally offended when I saw what they were trying to do with this brand, I'll tell you how I took it. I took it as a culturally relevant brand that built up its relationship with customers over the course of decades, had a right to not be hijacked and abused by people who were trying to, as they say, plant seeds of inclusion in merchandise, in a product. Products are not there to push progressive, woke, communist agendas or whatever kind of agendas people are trying to push. Yes, inside your country, you might occasionally see patriotic items that are mixed with products. You might see an American flag on a beer can. You might see an American flag on a box of cereal during July 4th or some other special national holiday. That represents the existing country that gives us our freedoms. That's acceptable. It is not acceptable to try to plant seeds of inclusion or seeds of other psychological operations on the general public. If you do that and we catch you doing that, we're going to boycott your products. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you agree with me that this is Alyssa Heinersheet's fault, even if the plan existed before she got there? Or do you think differently about it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.